chapters. They use, and they're in a bunch of different areas. We have over 30 virtual chapters. So if you have an interest in PowerShell, virtualization, security, pick up a language. Test your Spanish and your Italian, you know. So there's BI, there's Women in Technology. All you'll do is you take your pass ID and associate it with a virtual chapter, just like you associate it with the BI chapter or the St. Louis SQL chapter, and you'll get the emails on when the meetings are. And the advantage of the Lunch and Learn is you can ask the questions, but all the virtual chapters do record their meetings, so if you're looking for something specific, it's a great place to start looking for some lectures and topics. So SQL Saturdays are a one-day mini conference put on by a local chapter, and these are the SQL Saturdays coming up in the U.S. and then Latin America, in Europe, or in New Zealand. We're still considering one. We did one last year. It was very successful. If you're all interested in helping with the SQL Saturday, just come see me and we'll put your name down. If you're interested in being the chairman of the SQL Saturday, please come and see us. Whoops. These are ways that you can get in touch with PASS and stay in contact. And then this is the information. Dan Guzman, like I said, he's one of our local MVPs. He's an IT professional with over 30 years of database administration and development experience, specializing in SQL Server. And he's been working with SQL since 4.2.1. Has anyone in here worked with 4.2.1 or yay, Pete? Yeah, I think I came on at 6 or 6.5. Dan's active in the SQL community. He's been an officer in the St. Louis area in the SQL user group, and he's been an MVP since 2001. So Dan, we're very fortunate to have Dan on our board to help us plan our meetings. Steve Howard, we greatly appreciate Steve Howard for stepping in for Sean Nesser, who swore that if we delayed the meeting, he would be here. But Steve's a data platform technology specialist for Microsoft. He's an advocate for the data culture delivered through faster insights by more people everywhere. He's a lifelong learner and a Microsoft certified cloud and big data architect. Prior to joining Microsoft, he worked in telco, utilities, e-commerce, and consumer loyalty as a developer and solutions architect. So they're going to take it away. And you're recording, right?
I am recording this time. Don't want to be on Julie's bad list by forgetting to record the session. All right. Do you want to go to the other deck? I'm going to be talking a lot, and then I have to use my fingers too, so it's really hard to hold a little microphone and do demos at the same time. That didn't work. Maybe that's better. What did the presentation not load? Yeah, it crashed. Man, it's a good thing SQL Server is not as hard as actually hosting a meeting about SQL Server. We started at about 12:20 trying to get all the logistics worked out. So we're going to load a PowerPoint deck here. Just to show of hands in the room, who's actually been into the SQL Server portal, SQL Server Azure portal, okay? Who's actually deployed, like clicked on the little, and deployed an Azure SQL database? All right, great. So we're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to get into details, feature details, DBA type details on this. So just to understand how today is going to work, does anybody remember this movie? What was this movie called? Anybody know? Come on, just say it. You're not being recorded. I'm the one on the mic. Anybody remember this movie? Silver Streak? stir crazy. We got a lot of them. I guess you guys have been in a lot of movies. See no evil, hear no evil, right? One guy's blind, one guy's deaf. I hope we do a little better job than that today, Dan, but here's the thing. I'm the cloud architect, right? So I've been doing Azure for about 4 years, lots of data services, right, from, Hadoop to machine learning to, analysis services in Azure. That's my background, but I've never been a DBA. Who in the room's a DBA? Okay, so save all your really hard questions for Dan, and then of course Dan is the Microsoft SQL Server MVP. I blog at angryanalytics.com. It's mostly about Power BI, business intelligence. Dan is a TV Telta, and yeah, that's some pretty deep stuff you've got there. So. All right, a couple of, I'd say, housekeeping before we get to all the awesomeness of SQL Azure. Anybody, I think you guys might have talked about this a little bit last time, was the changes in Service Pack 1 as far as licensing goes. Who loves Microsoft SQL Server licensing? Raise your hand. I'm not sharing my screen. Hold on. Let's see here. It's because we went into presenter mode. This is the problem. Okay, hold that by default, sorry. Here. Stop presenting. We are presenting. Let's do this. Click up here. Slideshow. Get rid of presenter mode from current slide. Maybe. Stop presenting. Let's go back to the Skype game.
The presentation is paused.
Share screen. Primary monitor. Think that'll work? You're presenting your primary monitor. Presentation is paused. This is awesome. Is anybody scared yet from ever presenting at one of these meetings? Stop presenting. Okay, present.
I'm glutton for punishment myself. That's why I'm here.
Let's just do that. I think that actually looks like we'll want to present. Secondary monitor. Does it look like we're sharing? Okay, we're sharing again. Sorry about that. All right, so let's go back over here. Dan, now we have 2 monitors we have to keep track of. Okay, so just remember, SQL Server Enterprise, SQL Server Standard Edition. What we did in SP1 is we pushed a lot of features down to Standard Edition. Okay, so if you want to use things like always encrypted, in-memory OLTP, in-memory column store, all of these ones in bold on this slide have been pushed down to Service Pack, to Standard in Service Pack 1, okay? So if you're doing new installs of SQL Server, you don't always have to install Enterprise if you just want, some of these features, right? So just keep that in mind when you start looking at deploying new SQL Server instances. I mean, if you already have Enterprise Edition, you're already paying, SA for that license. This isn't really going to save you there, but if you're going to deploy new instances on new cores, then this will save you some money. And then don't forget about the fact that, we already have pre-version builds of SQL Server vNext that are running on Linux, right? And for the people in this room, that might not be that important to you, but as SQL Server enthusiasts, this is important to you and your organizations because a lot of your enterprise architects, they're smarter than everybody else, right? And they're going to tell you that here's my decision tree of, deciding on technology, and if running on Linux as an OS is one of those, criteria that they have a checkbox on, right? Doesn't matter how awesome SQL Server is, that's how they think, right? I used to be one of those guys and used to think like that sometimes too, so I've been enlightened from then. But this is important, and this isn't just like some port of SQL Server, right? This is full functional SQL Server on a Linux environment, Red Hat Linux, Ubuntu, Docker containers if you want to use that. So this is all the stuff that's already working in the pre-build for SQL vNext, right? So just make sure you're advocating in your organization that, you know, SQL Server is continuing to improve. We're bringing more features down into standard edition. We're very competitive. Any open source technology that there might be, as soon as you have to start paying, you know, enterprise support on that environment, you know, well, there's your standard edition licensing cost, and then here's your SQL Server on Linux. Okay, any questions on that? That's really not what today was about, but I just want to make sure that we pound that into everybody's heads over the next probably 4 sessions. Make sure you're aware. Okay, so Azure SQL Database. I just want to bring this up a level, right, because these are the things that are challenges in your environment, right? You're in the weeds, you're dealing with everything you deal with on a day-to-day basis. But remember, when it comes to managing a data platform, you know, honestly, your end users don't care about how awesome of a DBA you are, or what you're, you know, if you're managing 1,000 databases to an individual DBA. They care about the fact that, you know, there's money being sunk into the data center, you know, every year. Your organization, right, is paying for electricity, air conditioning, you know, space. Sometimes you're leasing out that space. Boxes, your servers are actually being leased from a company or purchased, right? Those are all physical expenses that are going on in your data center. You're actually spending money on raw iron that's not being utilized. Does anybody have 100% utilized, you know, server capacity in their SQL Server environment? No, you always have to have extra, so if something's needed, you can spin up extra. So there's always extra cost that's being sunk into your data center. Building custom databases, really, honestly, another one is SQL Server licensing, right? So we have to feed our kids too. So we have SQL Server costs a license and then SA on those licensing costs. So that's also something that you pay for when you install SQL Server on premises, right? So all of those costs, when you take into consideration, really, you know, come up with, you know, these types of statistics. And this is what your organizations care about, okay? Now, if you move one SQL Server database from an instance on premises to the cloud, are you going to get these type of cost savings? No way, right? You already have the instance, you already have the people that are maintaining that instance, you already have the server infrastructure. Okay, these costs don't come from that baby step, okay? These costs come when you start moving entire farms to the cloud, is where you can get this type of you know, cost savings. Okay, can you move an entire farm to the cloud, step one? No, right? So you're going to have to take that baby step at some point that is not going to result in a huge, you know, total cost of ownership change. It might even increase your total cost of ownership because you already own the instance, and now I'm paying operational costs inside of Azure to run that database on a monthly basis, right? It costs me $15 a month for, you know, something small, maybe $400 a month for something that's, you know, more mission critical. Okay, you have to recognize that that's a challenge with moving to this environment. It's not until critical mass is moved that you're going to start seeing those cost savings. But when you do move critical mass, you absolutely will see numbers that are comparable to that. Okay, so when people tell you, oh, we can run it here, you know, locally cheaper, yeah, absolutely. You can't move one database instance and you're going to, you know, get that type of return, but you absolutely will if you start working on it and get more critical mass moved. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about today. Azure SQL Database. This is the intelligent database, all right? And this is how we're going to hyperscale you as a DBA or DBAs in your organization. So we're going to kind of go through this. I'm going to show you, we'll go through some basics. I won't spend a lot of time on basics. A lot of you have already deployed a database to Azure. But we're going to talk about how it learns and adapts, right? How it scales on the fly. Dan's got some demos there. We're going to talk about multi-tenancy and elastic database pools and what that means. the tools you need in your environment to make this work and what tools it does work with. And then really some of the business continuity needs like backup, restore, geo-replication. We'll go through that. After all that's over, if we feel like we're done and we're excited and we're getting ready to leave, remind us because we need to talk about how you migrate an existing database from on-premises to the cloud as well. So don't let us leave without talking about that either. Does that sound okay? Any burning questions like you'll be upset if you leave this meeting and we didn't talk about today? Anybody? At the end. Okay, burning questions at the end. All right. Okay, learn something down. So, is anybody a security expert in the room? Raise your hand. Security expert? No security experts. So, what we do in this environment is we do things like automatic threat detection, okay? We will, it's Azure, right? If you're hosting your databases on our cloud, we will monitor telemetry and can actually see if things look strange or not, right? If we can look for SQL injection type of patterns, we'll be able to see that. If we have logins, if all your usage, is coming from the United States and all of a sudden we see, logins starting to occur from Russia, right? We see that as an anomaly, all right? And we can detect that, we can tell you, all right? So you do not have to be a security expert, and we are going to apply that over the top of what you're doing. Anomaly detection, self-tuning, and performance. Does any DBA, guys that all raise your hands, how many of you trust that we can automate your performance tuning on your database? Is anybody? No, I can't believe anybody, well, one, can't believe that nobody would trust some automated machine to just, set up indexes for you. Absolutely get that. Let's talk about how you can use that, though. Actionable recommendations, we're talking about the virtual DBA. So what we're thinking, we look at this as, we've got the Azure elves running around in our data centers helping you be more productive, okay? So whenever you talk to is anybody also, sorry, there's a lot of audience participation. Anybody else in Oracle DBA in the room? Oracle DBAs? No? Okay. So you know how there's 10 Oracle DBAs that maintain 50 databases, and then you have 2 SQL Server DBAs maintaining 1,000 databases, right? That's what I always assume, okay? But we want you to be able to maintain, 1,000 databases apiece, right? And this is the idea of the virtual DBA helping you with some of those kind of second-tier applications that you're running. Some of these you don't even touch right now, but this way those users of those databases are getting, all the performance tuning love also. And you can just set up your Azure, virtual DBA, the little elf running around in your data center to do that for you. That's how it works, right, Dan?
Absolutely.
Okay. You see, that's your MVP telling you that's how it works. Okay. Threat detection. I've got something better than this to show, but this is the idea. We use those machine learning. We've been doing this for a long time in our environment. We use machine learning to look for threats. We can keep a full audit log, so you just turn audit logging on. We can see all login attempts, firewall blocks, any of that information by just one click. You can turn that on, and then unusual patterns are there. Self-tuning, we'll talk about this when we get to it in the demo. Actionable recommendations. So if we see that you have credit card numbers, security, social security numbers in your database, column names, we can make those recommendations. Hey, do you really want to show this? You can just apply a data mask over the top of that. So some of these capabilities are there too. And then yes, it is the virtual DBA. Dan's buying into this back here. I can see he's bought in. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at. So Dan, I'm going to move this up here. That works. I know you guys love PowerPoint presentations, but let's go ahead and look at the portal. Okay, so a lot of you have already been in the portal. But those of you that haven't, so this is Azure. This is where you can spin up an entire data center. Okay, we have some organizations, even locally, that we're working with that are literally replacing data centers. It doesn't really work. So literally replacing data centers and moving their data to Azure. So from here, the way this works is I can click on this little plus button, come in here and, go to databases. And here's what I can spin up. Down here, we actually see an Enterprise SQL 2016 VM, right? So that would look just like what you're doing on premises in a VM. This is an instance. You're going to spin up a virtual machine with SQL Server installed. All the capabilities you have on premises you would get inside of that box. But guess what? You're also going to pay. Any guesses? You're going to pay SQL Server licensing for that virtual machine as well, right? You're going to pay the compute cost of that virtual machine. So what we're going to talk about is SQL database inside of Azure. So if you're familiar with the term infrastructure as a service versus platform as a service, in platform as a service, what we remove is the operating system, right? The operating system and the runtime, we manage that for you, okay? So you do not have to have an administrator managing that environment. You still get to be a DBA, though. You still get to do DBA type of work. So we're abstracting that level and only doing the value add work inside of this environment. So if we wanted to set up one of these new SQL servers, we're going to call this database name SQL Server User Group 03-2017, right? I'm going to set this up on my internal consumption. Resource groups are just a way that you can kind of collect different virtual machines, different resources inside of Azure, put them all together so that if it's marketing that this is for, we can create a resource group for marketing. We can keep all their costs and everything contained to just that one resource group, right? So it's just a good way to kind of group things together inside the cloud. That could be multiple services, not just databases. Yes, Gary?
Can you zoom in a little bit?
Zoom in, yes. Can you now see in the back row? Okay, great. Okay, so you're going to select the source. Of course, you would create a blank database. I'm going to use my favorite database. And then we'll talk about elastic database pools a little later. And then this is an important concept that even I don't 100% understand. This is how we measure performance inside of Azure, okay? So right now, when you install SQL Server on premises, you install it on, what do you install? 24 cores, 128 gigs of RAM? Is that it? Yeah, okay. So that's what you install SQL Server on premises. You don't have cores, RAM, CPU, any of those types of indicators inside of SQL Azure. You have something called a DTU. It's a database transactional unit, okay? And this is a performance metric, and of course, in all of Microsoft's wisdom, we ran some benchmark workload for OLTP, and we said, this is how that, that read-write type of scenario should work, and then we've created a DTU on top of that. There is actually a DTU calculator. You can go out and see if, what type of metrics you're getting on your instance on premises, and then, bring it up and, you need 100 DTUs to handle that workload. I've never used it. It's just kind of, honestly, trial and error. You do your QA or dev testing on a box, and then the nice thing about it, though, is it is elastic. So I can change my DTU, and you can see my price per month there, right? So if I have a DTU of 100, it's going to cost me $150 a month for that database. But on the standard, I can scale it all the way back down to 10 DTU, and it's only going to cost me $15 a month. Yes?
Well, one of the things that you said leading up was it's self-scaling.
It can.
It's not self-scaling.
You're 100% right. This is me in the portal, doing this, right?
Another option.
In the portal, not necessarily, but you can do it inside of PowerShell and inside of scripting, okay? So you can automate it with scripts. Does anybody actually plan to use the portal in their real jobs? Probably not. You're probably mad that I'm actually in the portal showing you a GUI, okay? You want to see PowerShell, that's why we have Dan here. But this is the concept, right? You need to understand the concepts and just know that all of the capabilities I'm talking about here are available through REST APIs and through PowerShell commands, okay? So again, this is something that now if I want to go up to a premium tier, and we can scale all that all the way up, $16,000 a month, right? So now we're getting into what it would cost you to run an Oracle database, right? So if you want something that's really big and massive, then you can scale that all the way up. But this is really just to start out with, and then you can start monitoring this and figure out, when you want to kind of auto scale your database or not. So we're just going to start out with a very small one. Apply that. I've already have a server. So the concept of server inside of Azure, this is just a logical server. It's a logical grouping. This is not the same thing as an instance, okay, or a virtual machine. It's a logical grouping of databases that you can apply like firewall rules to and some other limited things. But it's really just a logical grouping of SQL servers. Elastic database pools, like I'll talk about that later, and then we're going to create. And then in just a couple of minutes, so it's deployed started, in a couple of minutes this will be done, and you'll be able to start interacting with it. So I'll go to one that's already created here. Let's see what's next on the list. So concept of, if I want to come down to my SQL database, right here. Maybe let's go into my taxi demo. I've been playing with a billion record data set. If you're looking for a billion records, there's the New York taxi data set. You can go out and look for it. It's all the cab rides from yellow and green cab from 2009 to 2016. It's about 1.2 billion records. So this is a smaller version of that. It's only got about 10 million records in it. But this is one that I set up, created. And inside of here, you have multiple features, capabilities. The first thing we talked about was the idea of auditing and threat detection. So I come here, and I turn this on. I think I have there's a firewall, threat detection. So because I'm not a hacker and I'm not good at writing SQL injection because I've never, done it. I've seen it, and you put the little quotes at the end and try to, dismiss the where clause to get everybody's information back whenever you're on a web form to do that. But here's the thing: is if you come and turn auditing and threat detection on, this is what will happen: is if it sees something that looks suspicious, you'll get one of these emails to you to let you know it's found suspicious behavior. You might want to go check. There is a link inside of there to go to the Azure SQL audit logs. Okay, so these are the audit logs that you turn on at the same time. It'll find that incident. You'll be able to go into that incident and then be able to look at the details, actually see the SQL that was ran, what it considered to possibly be a threat. We'll do all of this for you just by turning the threat detection on. There's also an Excel link for this that you can open it, and then you can actually access all the auto logs inside of Excel as well. But over here inside the portal, took too long to load here. Let's refresh it. Come back. Think it'll work this time, Dan?
I do.
We'll see.
Not going to.
Yeah. If it doesn't, we'll just move on and act like it never happened. But anyway, it's just a couple of buttons here, and then you can actually go to the audit logs. That's the one thing I wanted to show here is the view audit logs. I'm not sure why it's not loading. While we're here, we can talk about this, right? TDE is available, so you can just turn that on any database instance. So that's their dynamic data masking. Has everybody seen dynamic data masking so far in SQL 2016? Yes? No? Oh, wow. Okay. So,
by the way, we're having a presentation, I think, next.
Oh, great. Okay. So I don't have to talk about it.
I'm hoping.
Yep.
Hasn't been finalized.
So yeah, dynamic data masking is just that ability to go in and be able to apply a mask like a Social Security, put the stars instead of the numbers. It has some predefined masks for you that you can define. Well, this doesn't look good, does it? I'm going to go ahead and reopen the portal. section. All right. We do enable multi-factor authentication. Call me. So part of this loaded. So this is the activity going on this database. And notice up here that I get this improve your database performance. It's found a recommendation based on the usage patterns that have been going on in this database for the last few days. So I can come into this recommendation and see that it's giving me an index recommendation, medium impact. Come over here and look at what the what it's telling me it needs to index. This is a great demo right now, isn't it? Dan, do you mind if I use your, I go directly from your machine?
No problem.
No problem. All right, let's take that off. I'll let this go up. As soon as I went there, then there we go. That. I'll bring it up right here. Sorry, guys. Oh, that's your Azure portal?
Yeah, I can talk.
Here, private. I have to log in anyway. All right. Oh, something went wrong. Great. I feel like the guy that was on YouTube when S3 went down a couple of weeks ago. Sign in with your phone. All right, here we go. All right. All right, so let's go to SQL DB. Let's go into this one that actually has had some recommendations applied. process recommendations. Which one wants first? This is comical. All right.
Yeah, our wireless connection might not be the best here.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty sad, isn't it? Okay. Well, anyway, I'll talk to it. What I was going to show you here is one of my databases. I set up the automated recommendation engine. Yeah. And what's nice is it doesn't just create drop indexes for you, right? Because then, you know, it will actually monitor then what happens after it created that. So there's some statistics it'll give you to show you after it created an index, it'll look at that query that it was trying to improve and then find if it actually improved it or not. If it saw a degradation, then it'll actually it will remove that index for you. So again, this isn't something that you would allow, you know, one of your mission critical databases to do, but it does have the smarts built in to do performance tuning that, you know, a lot of times if you add that index and it does something that you didn't expect it to do, it'll see that and then revert it back out after it's been applied, right? So for all these databases you're not hardly touching, you could consider that as a possible opportunity to scale yourself up, allow it to do some of that tuning for you, and go from there. Does that make sense? Yes?
Question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's right now I've only seen the auditing. I think there is an ability to set a specification. If anybody knows, tell me. Set a specification to actually not allow that login, but right now it'll monitor and see when something happens. Yes. Yeah.
Can I ask a question now?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you can ask a question now. Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
You know, there is a fog-like monitor SQL server. So can you monitor the Azure SQL database with monitoring tools, or can I? That's why.
No, you. There's different tools that you can model, like not SC, the escaping me, SQL Server. What is it? Well, Redgate. I don't know for sure about Redgate. I know that there's a plugin for System Center, right? That you can use for SCOM. Yeah, SCOM. That you can do all of that as well. So you can monitor all of your databases inside of Azure. Right? There's a couple of third parties that also provide it as well. So if you have that dual environment, what I wanted to show you though is OMS. OMS is the cloud-based version that can monitor your cloud tools as well as your on-premises tools all through our OMS portal as well. All right. I'll come back over here. And yeah, looks like we're struggling. Okay. Another thing that you can do is also set up firewall rules for the database. So these are other considerations that you want to make, right, is the fact that Azure SQL Database is public, okay? It's not inside of a VNet. You can set up a VPN to Azure virtual machines on infrastructure as a service, but as of right now, Azure databases are all public facing. So how we manage that is all through firewall rules. So this is Dan sent me this article. It's a good depiction, right? But it's very easily in the portal or through a couple of stored procedures to be able to set up firewall rules either at the individual database level or at the logical server level, right? So that's where you're going to set up your data center or your app servers to be able to access your Azure SQL database. As far as how you can monitor in the cloud, that's where I wanted to show you OMS. So we have, hope this opens up. So Operation Management Suite is basically a log tool. So this is where you can define through a PowerShell script to define your SQL database and SQL databases in your subscription that you want to be monitored through OMS, and it will send all the telemetry data from those SQL databases to this tool. And then here what you have is, this is just the out-of-the-box, basically SQL database dashboard. It shows you DTU utilization, and obviously I don't have any bad actors here for CPU, DTU, storage consumption, but it would show you your top bad actors inside of this environment. Down here, I can actually see my individual databases and what they're consuming. So you can see my average DTU percentage for each of these are like 4%, right? So it's very minimal, running on a fairly small DTU load, but it's very small. So I can come into here and be able to look at a lower level. It'll actually give me all kinds of log capabilities that I can modify. I can modify parameters.
Would you use this in place of Profiler?
Profiler.
Is there something like Profiler?
Yeah, I'll speak to that a little bit for Profiler. You know, that we have, well, even on-prem for that matter, extended events is the so-called replacement for it. It's actually, you know, a separate architecture, but it does provide this similar type functionality in terms of, for example, identifying long-running queries over certain thresholds and so on and so forth. However, in the Azure world, that's actually at the database level, not the server level. So, you know, it's a little bit different paradigm once you get in the Azure side. But that's really something.
And if I can get into it, I'll show you the query insights that shows you some of that as well. But think of OMS as more of your system center, managing all 1,000 databases, seeing the bad actors, seeing what's going on with them. And then once you see here which ones you need to pay attention to, that's where you can go into the portal and actually do some of the more query insights capabilities. So I'll show that to you real quick, and then I'll turn it over to Dan. If I can come in, if we can get to the query performance. So down here, we've got query performance insights. And then this is where we can see any long-running queries, or we can customize kind of how we want this to look at the world. So here it's showing me over time what my longest running queries are. Again, none of these are taking out an incredible amount of duration, but I can bring it up here and then I can see, you know, what it is. Compared to everything else running on that box. So it can do a good job. Like I said, use OMS at that top level to look down and then be able to drill into the individual database and see what's going on. Lastly, there are alert rules, and you can set this up either at that OMS level or at the database level. So you can just set up basic alert rules on DTU, CPU usage. If it exceeds your threshold for, sometime within, a 5-minute window, blocked by firewall DTU limit, right? I can set all that up here, be able to specify a group of emails, a distribution list or something that I want to send that information to as well. So it looks like my MSIT portal is not operating as well as we would all like it to have a good demo. If it comes back, we show a little more of this later. But maybe we can move over to some of the.
All right. I have a question.
Yeah.
I saw at the bottom of the threshold where we can configure a webhook.
Yeah.
So I guess one could use that to send alert to a custom server, like, for example, scale up.
Yep. Do the automation. So that's through the webhooks. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but if something does go over a threshold, it instigates the alert, then you can send that to a service on another machine or whatever that can actually instantiate a job. If it is DTU, then that is where you can just automatically scale up your DTU on that box to make sure that you're not getting any performance degradation. All right. Cool. So that's some of the overview items. Again, I wish I could have shown more of it to you, but now you want to talk about scaling and performance?
Sure.
Right. I think it's right here. Go slideshow from current. There you go. All right. Does everybody, hopefully people can hear me here. So can everybody hear me? I see nods in the room, so hopefully everybody's okay over the phones. With scaling, the nice thing about it is there's no downtime involved as you change your your machine size, basically, scaling up and down. And I'll show that in an actual real live demo in a minute here. But it definitely has the advantages to react to either unanticipated usage or usage that you expect to happen before it happens, rather than reactively afterwards. I know in my current industry, in the brokerage industry at Scottrade, we have an absolutely huge spike at the same time every day, first thing in the morning, as every client decides to log in and start placing their trades and all that. And then it reduces throughout the day, and then another spike near the end of the the trading day. But Azure would be absolutely perfect for that, so that we could actually add almost excess capacity at market open when the East Coast trading market's open, and then scale it back after market hours. But unfortunately, we're in the on-prem world, and it's not that easy to do. So anyway, if we had to do it all over again, I think we'd definitely be in the cloud. It does work, guaranteed. So anyway, that allows you to guarantee the the resources and to make sure that your application is reliable. I know some applications are more sensitive to performance issues than others. Sometimes they don't just get slow; they actually crash and burn. So scalability is important. And we saw the little slider bar. It's really, really easy to do, in the portal. But it can also be, automated, via script, either PowerShell or even T-SQL script, as I'll show in a minute here. So it's very powerful. It allows you to, scale up as needed into the either from, most people probably won't be running production workloads on the basic tier, but from standard to premium and back down again, it's pretty easy to do. Let's see. That's your, okay, I'll just go over to the demo here. Go ahead and get that up. So I guess I can. That's your report. Oh, there we go. Okay. All righty. Try it. Where's my mouse at? Over the inside. Oh, okay. I was going to the right when the monitor's on my left here, the mouse is on the right, so a little tricky. So in the portal, I have a couple existing databases out here, just for demo purposes that I created.
One of them you may be familiar with. It's the Wide World Importers SQL Server demo database. Nothing fancy. But right now I have both configured, both of these independent databases. They're on the same logical SQL instance, but they're configured independently because each database has its own, basically it's almost like a private SQL instance all by itself. There's very little that's shared with the actual logical server except for really logins and server level firewall rules are the only thing that is associated with the logical server. Everything else is at the database layer. So I'll pick the demo database here just to show you how you can do this in the portal, which is similar to what we saw when Steve was creating a brand new database. This one here probably isn't especially highly used since it's just my own little private database, but right now it's on the lowest end of the standards here. It's an S0. But we can also scale up as needed through the portal. And mind you, this happens without any downtime whatsoever. Applications can actually be actively using this existing database while I'm running it. And I think we already saw the pretty slider bars here. So rather than applying it, actually I'll go ahead and apply this here just for SMGs. Let's see, this is the, make sure I'm using the same database here. Okay. And that's an asynchronous operation, meaning that I click OK and it's going to, run for maybe a minute or so while it actually does that scaling, and I'll be alerted when it's done. But at the same time, I can also do the the scaling via T-SQL scripts too. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and launch Management Studio. That I probably should have done ahead of time because this takes a minute to launch. I'm using the Management Studio preview on my laptop here, but you have the same functionality with the regular SSMS that you can install. In case you're not aware of it, SSMS is a separate download now and is installed and released, maintained independently of the actual SQL Server version. And typically you get about a new version about every month or so. So, I strongly suggest you use the latest SSMS version, especially if you're going to be doing anything on Azure, because things change fast in the cloud, and new features, and they get pushed out to the Management Studio, pretty frequently. Management Studio ain't working on me. Try it again here. Now I had this. I should know better than to use pre-release versions of SSMS for demos. I haven't learned my lesson yet. Okay, give me a second here. There we go. Just try. Yep. All right. So here's the Management Studio. I just want to show you a couple things while I'm here. Let me connect to my local instance first. Then I'll also connect to the Azure instance. But as you can see, what I want to underscore here is the difference in what you see in Management Studio under the Object Explorer nodes, just to kind of give you an idea of what's available. On the Azure side, we just have a couple of nodes by default here. We just have databases and security. And databases, I'm sure you're somewhat familiar with. That's a list of all the databases that are associated with this logical instance, just like you would if you had a physical instance on-prem. But the physical, my local server here also has a bunch of other nodes that we don't have in Azure and don't need to, because in most cases there's equivalent functionality that's implemented totally differently, like always-on availability groups and whatnot. But I just want to mention that just to compare some of those. But under system databases, which we see in Azure, the only one we have is master. There is no MSDB. TempDB exists, but it's at the actual individual database instance level, not at the server level. There is no model database. So, the world's a little bit different out there. So if you're transitioning from an on-prem type DBA, just be aware that some of the things are similar, or familiar, but at the same time they're different. So just be advised. But anyway, let's see. I forgot which database I scaled. Was it the demo database or was it the? I can find out just by going back to my portal for a second here. All right, yeah, so the demo database scale completed, and I did see a notification out here, I assume. Well, word of caution, sometimes notifications are not real time, they get a little behind. But right now, this should be on the premium tier. Now, I can do something similar with, as I mentioned, with, T-SQL and or, whoops, wrong button here, T-SQL and or PowerShell. I just get my mouse mixed up there. There we go. Sure. Alrighty, so let's see, we have some files. I think that's the right one. Okay. So in the context of the logical server, mind you, not the actual database that you want to scale, let me go ahead and run this script just to show you what I have. When I select from sys databases, it looks just like a regular on-prem instance here. But the big difference is that you also have you see all of your, your normal stuff except for, some differences that apply to Azure DMVs that you don't see. But the main DMV that I want to show you here is this operational status, which shows you a history of some of the operations that were done against the database. Like in this case here, we can see an Ultra database was performed and completed against the demo database. And in this case here, that was the auto scale operation I had previously done. But notice that the times here, in Azure, all times are in UTC. All I can say is get used to it, because you cannot configure your time zone on Azure SQL DB or any of the services and stuff. It's really, the idea is that, it's really up to the client to translate the time zone to the local time that's needed. But it gives you the ability to move to different regions and all over the world without having to mess with the time zone ugliness. So going back to the portal for a second here. I can. So that same scale operation that I did, I shouldn't do that from the portal, I'm sorry. Let me try this again. Forgot to bring my notes for my demo, so I'm kind of doing this ad hoc where I forgot the step. All right. So, do it again. Sorry, I'm on the right screen now. Yeah, I'm good. All right, so what I can do, though, is I can also, if I bring up the database properties of my Azure database here, those are also those same scale attributes are available, from Object Explorer under the database properties for the Azure section. And the network is a little bit slow today. I've got to drag it from my other screen. Under options here, you can actually change the scale directly from Management Studio as well. There's not necessarily a need to go through the portal. As you can see under the Azure section, we have this database is currently S2 standard with the 10 gig size. If I make a change here, I could just apply it directly. In this case here, I don't need to change the size. I'll just move up a tier. But I don't have to actually click OK here. I can actually script this to in this case here, I'll just script that action. And so now I have a T-SQL script in the clipboard that I'll go ahead and just post into the, or paste, I should say, into the query window. And you can see it's just regular DDL that doesn't alter database. Exactly, this is essentially what the portal did behind the scenes earlier. Now, if I run this, it's not going to block on the alter database. It just says immediately completed successfully, even though it's still probably running in the background here. As we can see, it says it's in progress, and the percent complete says 0. In my experience, that percent complete usually jumps from 0 to 50 and then to 100. It's not like it's, it's going to give you a whole lot of a progress bar kind of indication. And here's a little T-SQL script that all I'm doing here is essentially just polling that table and displaying progress notifications every second or so on the, as luck would have it, it's finished too fast. But anyway, it's all done. So it's 100% complete. So even though the portal, had I done this through the portal, it might say it's still doing it, when in reality it's all done. But that's how you can actually scale via T-SQL script. Now, to your earlier question about scaling it on the fly, on demand as you need it, there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. I mean, I could have a T-SQL script like this that's scheduled at intervals that I can actually check the current resource utilization and then issue the appropriate DDL commands. Fortunately, there's some DMVs that do expose that from T-SQL that basically gives you the average CPU, disk I/O, et cetera. Essentially, it tells you what your current DTU limit is, as well as the current resource utilization. So you could, schedule it yourself and do everything manually, or you could configure the alerts and send it to an endpoint for the web that actually runs that SQL script, or for that matter, a PowerShell script. So that's how you can actually do, pretty much scaling on the fly. This view here, and there's limited history, and it's at the logical SQL server level. There's also a DMV at the database level that's a lot more granular. Let's see if I can see here. Yeah, it looks like typically we have about every few minutes. I thought it was every 5 minutes, I guess I'm wrong, for the reports there. In the case of the resource stats at the database level, those are recorded, let's see, I thought it was every, so every 15 seconds or so. And it tells you, similarly, it tells you what the percentage is and what the current BTU is. So anyway, that's how you can schedule via T-SQL, and you can also, or scale, I should say, and you can also scale via PowerShell script as well, just by, running some PowerShell commandlets. And by the way, if you don't already have it, I guess it's there's a couple ways you can get all those the Azure commandlets. I usually have Visual Studio installed on my machine, so I get them all the time. But you can download the Azure SDK as well that has the, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that the right way to get it, Steve, is the Azure SDK, the Azure commandlets or PowerShell.
PowerShell?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's the way it is, or at least that's the way it was. We did mention that you could do a lot of this. Anything you can do with the portal, you can do either directly with the REST APIs, which is to say I'm writing a C# program or some other kind of program, or you can do it through PowerShell. And they have a semi-deprecated command line interface for a lot of this stuff too. That's part of the SDK. But I think the world's going towards PowerShell primarily. The only time you'd really want to use the REST APIs is if you're running or creating pretty much a hardcore custom, application to orchestrate perhaps, some DevOps stuff or something like that. PowerShell I think is the primary tool that most people are going to use going forward, unless you really like clicking around the portal trying to find stuff. All right, that's my scale there. Any questions, anybody on that? Or yes, sir.
The DTU, if you the way it's balanced, the way they define it, is it really meant to go from like a 10, 20? Is that on average, generally speaking, roughly cut 20 times down?
Yeah, the question was, when you scale the DTUs, is the actual performance improvement proportional to the actual DTU number, if I paraphrase that correctly? Yes, I mean, that's the intent. But what DTUs actually are under the covers are a mix of CPU, data I/O, log I/O, all that stuff put together. So if your application, for example, tends to be disproportionately heavy on I/O, you might not necessarily see those same sort of gains. So, take it with a grain of salt. Your real experience is really going to be where the truth is. Any other questions related to scaling or? All right. I think you're on deck for the next one. You drive so much better than I do, so I'll let you have fun with that.
Do you guys want to take a break now? Or?
No, we don't want to take a break.
Heaven forbid.
Nobody wants to take a break. They're so engaged. No, I'm kidding. We can take a break. 10 minutes. We're going to cover elastic database pools and then business continuity, DR, backup, all that stuff, right? So, and then that give me a chance to actually make sure my portal's working. So. All right.
So let's take a 10-minute break.
Oh, okay. Well, you have to remind me to start it back up. Okay.